The James Webb Space Telescope has observed the interstellar comet 3I Atlas for the first time, using its infrared instruments to study the comet's size, composition, and outgassing. Discovered in July of 2025, 3I Atlas is the third known interstellar visitor, and the James Webb Space Telescope detected unusually high levels of carbon dioxide along with water, carbon monoxide, and carbonyl sulfide in its coma. The comet's composition may reveal the conditions of its formation around another star, possibly near a carbon dioxide ice line, and its low water vapor suggests heat struggles to penetrate its icy core, Space.com has reported. An estimated 7 billion years old, 3I Atlas is the oldest comet ever observed, and ongoing James Webb Space Telescope observations aim to uncover more about its origin and structure before it exits the solar system. Keurig Dr. Pepper will acquire Dutch coffee and tea company JDE Peet's for about $18 billion, aiming to strengthen its struggling U.S. coffee business. The deal, which offers JDE Peet's shareholders a 33% premium, is expected to generate $400 million in cost synergies over 3 years. Following the acquisition, Keurig plans to split its beverage and coffee operations into separate U.S.-listed companies, with the coffee unit projected to reach $16 billion in annual sales, CNBC has reported. JDE Peet's CEO will remain in his role until the deal closes. Australia has expelled Iran's ambassador and 3 officials, giving them 7 days to leave, after accusing Tehran of directing anti-Semitic arson attacks in Sydney and Melbourne. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese called the incidents linked by intelligence to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, quote, dangerous acts of aggression aimed at sowing discord. Australia has withdrawn its diplomats from Tehran, suspended embassy operations, and warned citizens against travel to Iran. Foreign Minister Penny Wong noted it was the first expulsion of an ambassador since World War II, the BBC has reported. Canberra also plans to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization, a move welcomed by Israel. Iran has denied the allegations. President Donald Trump attacked the Senate's blue slip tradition on Sunday, claiming it blocks him from exercising his constitutional right to appoint judges. The practice lets home state senators approve or oppose judicial nominees, often stalling confirmations. While President Trump appointed 234 judges in his first term, only 5 have been confirmed in his second, a slowdown that he blames on partisan obstruction, Newsweek has reported. He urged Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley to scrap the system, calling it outdated and unfair, while critics argue it preserves local input and balance in federal appointments. Ethereum pulled back 6% on Monday after hitting a record high over the weekend, while Bitcoin dropped over 1%. The recent volatility followed a market surge after Fed Chair Jerome Powell hinted at possible rate cuts, triggering forced selling of $245 million in Ethereum and $175 million in Bitcoin long positions. Ethereum has been leading the crypto market, supported by corporate accumulation, staking, and ETF inflows, though its ETF saw $237 million in outflows just last week, the first negative week for Ethereum since May, CNBC has reported. Bitcoin ETFs, meanwhile, experienced over $1 billion in net outflows. SpaceX canceled its Starship launch scheduled for August the 24th due to a ground systems issue, despite the Super Heavy booster being fully fueled. The mission, the 10th Starship test since April of 2023 and the 4th of 2025, aimed to test the upper stage's orbital maneuvers and deploy 8 Starlink test satellites, while the booster was set for a water landing. Unlike previous launches, SpaceX planned no booster recovery, focusing instead on advancing Starship's performance for future crewed missions to space, USA Today has reported. The U.S. has confirmed its first human case of the flesh-eating New World screwworm parasite found in a Maryland resident who recently traveled to El Salvador. Officials said the patient has recovered and there is no risk of transmission, with overall public health risk considered very low. The parasite, which devastates livestock and pets, has recently re-emerged in Central America and Mexico after being eradicated decades ago. To combat its spread, the United States plans to release billions of sterilized flies over southern Texas and Mexico, though the program may take years to be fully operational, NBC News has reported. Texas officials warn an outbreak could cost the state's agricultural industry billions. The Oregon Flat Fire has burned nearly 22,000 acres, destroyed homes, and forced thousands to evacuate, with only 5% containment as of Monday. About 4,000 homes remain under evacuation notice, including 1,000 under mandatory go-now orders. Officials warn shifting winds and returning hot, dry weather could worsen conditions, though recent cloud cover and humidity briefly slowed the blaze. Governor Tina Kotek has invoked the Emergency Conflagration Act to bring in extra resources, while shelters and fairgrounds are housing displaced residents and animals, Fox News has reported. Fire crews remain cautiously optimistic but stress the fire's volatility and ongoing threat from spot fires. Thailand's constitutional court removed their prime minister for an ethics violation, ending her one-year tenure and delivering another setback to the Shinawatra political dynasty. The court cited a leaked call in which she appeared deferential to Cambodia's former leader Hun Sen amid a border conflict. Her ruling political party now faces a weakened position as Parliament prepares to elect a new prime minister, with a fragile coalition and intense political negotiations ahead, NBC News has reported. The deputy premier will lead a caretaker government in the interim amid growing public unease and economic challenges. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will visit China next week for the first time in 6 years to attend a military parade in Beijing marking the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. The event, also attended by Russian President Vladimir Putin and 24 other foreign leaders, highlights the growing alignment of Beijing, Moscow, and Pyongyang amid U.S. efforts to strengthen ties with South Korea and Japan. The parade, featuring China's latest weaponry, will be Kim's first major multilateral appearance since taking power in 2011, signaling North Korea's expanding international engagement and solidarity with pro-Russia and pro-China countries, NPR has reported. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, en route to his first summit with President Donald Trump, pushed back against U.S. pressure to shift the U.S.-South Korea alliance from deterring North Korea toward countering China, while Washington seeks greater strategic flexibility for its 28,500 troops in South Korea. Seoul remains focused on the North as its main threat and is weary of being drawn into a China conflict. Lee said he will press President Trump on pursuing diplomacy with Pyongyang, despite its refusal to engage, NPR has reported. Analysts say balancing U.S. demands while avoiding directly naming China as a foe is key to Seoul's strategy. Daniel K. Inouye Solar Telescope has captured the smallest magnetic loops ever seen in the sun's corona, measuring as little as 13 miles wide. Observed after an X-class solar flare in August of 2024, these tiny loops may be fundamental to the magnetic processes that power the sun's most powerful flares. Scientists say this breakthrough lets them study the sun at previously unseen scales, potentially resolving individual loops for the first time, Space.com has reported. The findings were published in August the 25th in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. However, proposed U.S. budget cuts could threaten the telescope's future and the solar research it supports. Microsoft has fired 2 employees who broke into the president's office during a protest against the Israeli military's alleged use of the company's software in Gaza. The protest, organized by a protest group, involved employees and former employees demanding that Microsoft end its support for Israel. Microsoft cited serious policy breaches and said it is cooperating with law enforcement, CNBC has reported. The company is also investigating broader concerns about its technology being used for surveillance following previous protests and arrest on its campus. Taipei City Council faced criticism after revealing it purchased a patrol robot dog made by Chinese company Unitree, which has ties to China's military. The robot, intended to help inspect pedestrian areas, uses cameras developed by a Taiwanese contractor, but opposition officials and commentators warned it could pose a national security risk by collecting sensitive data. The council said the purchase was a one-unit trial and pledged to address security concerns before further use, while Taipei's mayor confirmed discussions with the central government are ongoing, The Guardian has reported. SpaceX successfully launched 28 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit on August the 27th, using a Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral. The booster, B.1095, completed its second flight and achieved a milestone 400th successful drone ship landing. This marks SpaceX's 108th mission of 2025 and follows a Starship test launch, Space.com has reported. SpaceX's Starlink network now exceeds 8,100 satellites, providing near global internet coverage, with plans to expand using the more powerful Starship rocket in the future. Hertz Car Sales has partnered with Amazon Autos, allowing shoppers to browse, finance, and buy Hertz used cars online. The move aims to streamline the car buying experience and reach customers both online and in person. Hertz, one of the largest U.S. used car dealers, offers brands like Ford, Toyota, Chevrolet, and Nissan, while Amazon Autos gains its first fleet dealer, expanding its vehicle selection nationwide, USA Today has reported. Israelis staged nationwide protests on Tuesday demanding the release of hostages and an end to the Gaza war, blocking roads and planning a mass rally in Tel Aviv. Families of hostages accused the government of waging a war without clear objectives. Meanwhile, Israeli shelling hit Gaza City and nearby towns overnight, forcing more residents to flee as Israel prepares a new offensive. Local health officials said at least 34 Palestinians were killed, including 20 in a strike on the Nasser hospital that killed several journalists, NBC News has reported. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the hospital attack a, quote, tragic mishap. Australian police are conducting a massive manhunt for Desi Freeman, 56 years old, suspected of killing 2 officers and injuring a third in Victoria. The officers were fired upon while executing a warrant for alleged sexual offenses. Freeman remains at large in dense bushland near his home, with local authorities using helicopters, armored vehicles, and local expertise to track him. Police confirmed that Freeman's family is safe and warned locals to stay indoors, the BBC has reported. The suspect has reportedly expressed sovereign citizen beliefs, raising concerns about extremist views. Poland's new president, Karol Nawrocki, has vetoed legislation to extend welfare benefits for Ukrainian refugees, arguing only those in work should receive child payments. The veto blocks a bill that would have prolonged the current system until the year 2026, sparking criticism from Prime Minister Donald Tusk's government, which warned it punishes vulnerable families. Around 1 million Ukrainians, mostly women and children, live in Poland. The move reflects growing anti-Ukrainian sentiment, despite studies showing refugees benefit the economy. Nawrocki also vowed to propose new laws tightening assistance and banning the promotion of Ukrainian nationalist leader Stepan Bandera, The Guardian has reported. The veto has deepened a political standoff between the president and the government. The U.S. Air Force will grant military funeral honors to Ashley Babbitt, a 35-year-old Air Force veteran killed by Capitol Police during the January 6, 2021 riot. Babbitt, who served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and the UAE, was shot while attempting to enter a restricted area near the House chamber. A Capitol Police investigation deemed the shooting lawful, Politico has reported. Earlier this year, the Trump administration settled a wrongful death lawsuit with Babbitt's family for nearly $5 million. A North Carolina election official, James Yokley Jr., resigned after being arrested for allegedly putting illegal drugs, later identified as MDMA and cocaine, into ice cream his granddaughters were eating. The girls did not consume the drugs. Police reviewed video showing Yokley placing the substances in the ice cream. He was charged with contaminating food with a controlled substance, felony child abuse, and possession of a Scheduled 1 narcotic, and posted a $100,000 bond, CBS News has reported. Yokley had recently been appointed to lead the Surrey County Board of Elections and stated he remains confident that he will be exonerated. Asia Pacific markets fell Tuesday as investors reacted to President Trump's tariff threats and his move to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Trump warned of steep levies on China's rare earth exports and on countries with digital taxes. Hong Kong led regional losses, sliding 1.18%, while Japan fell 0.97%, and South Korea dropped 0.95%. Australia and India also declined. U.S. futures dipped after Wall Street closed lower overnight, with the Dow down 0.77%, the S&P 500 down 0.43%, and the Nasdaq slipping 0.22%, CNBC has reported. Investors now await Nvidia's earnings and new U.S. inflation data. Salvadorian migrant Kilmar Abrego Garcia, whose case has become a high-profile test of the Trump administration's immigration crackdown, is expected to be arrested and deported to Uganda when he reports to ICE in Baltimore on Monday. His 6-month legal battle has spanned multiple courts, with the DOJ accusing him of MS-13 ties and human smuggling, while supporters call him a hard-working father targeted unfairly. A judge previously ruled the government lacked evidence of gang membership and barred deportation to El Salvador due to safety concerns. After rejecting a plea deal tied to deportation to Costa Rica, Abrego now faces removal to a third country, Fox News has reported. Immigrant advocates plan a vigil in Baltimore, calling him a symbol of resistance to what they describe as unlawful deportation practices. President Trump suggested Sunday that former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie could face renewed scrutiny over the 2013 Bridgegate scandal, accusing him of lying to avoid prison and deflecting blame onto aides. The comments came after Christie, now a Trump critic and former GOP rival, told ABC's This Week that Trump rejects limits on presidential power. Christie was never charged in Bridgegate, and convictions of his allies were overturned by the Supreme Court in 2020, Axios has reported. President Trump's remarks highlight escalating tensions with Christie, who also questioned the credibility of Ghislaine Maxwell's past statements about Trump during the interview. Health officials are investigating a salmonella outbreak linked to eggs from California-based Country Eggs LLC, which has sickened 95 people across 14 states, including 73 cases in the state of California. 18 people have been hospitalized, with no deaths reported. The recalled eggs, sold under multiple brand names and packed for food service, were distributed from June 16th to July the 9th. Salmonella infection causes diarrhea, fever, and stomach cramps, and can be more severe in young children, older adults, and people with weakened immune systems, NBC News has reported. The CDC notes the true number of cases is likely higher due to underreporting. At Camp Atterbury, Indiana, defense contractor Ep.25 demonstrated its Leonidas system, which uses electromagnetic interference to disable drone swarms. In a test, Leonidas took down 49 quadcopters simultaneously without firing projectiles. The technology, aimed at countering threats at military sites, airports, and public venues, highlights the growing importance of counter-drone systems in modern warfare, Axios has reported. Ep.25, founded in 2018, has worked with the U.S. military, has raised $250 million, and is exploring electronic and cyber warfare alongside drone defense. Waymo has received its first New York City permit to test autonomous vehicles, marking the city's inaugural AV testing program. The company will operate up to 8 cars in Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn through late September, with a driver required behind the wheel. The move is part of Waymo's nationwide expansion, which includes Austin, San Francisco, Atlanta, Miami, Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia, CNBC has reported. The city's permit requires regular reporting and coordination with law enforcement and emergency services. Rocket Lab successfully launched 5 satellites for a confidential customer on August the 23rd, marking the 70th flight of its Electron rocket. The Live Laugh launch mission lifted off from New Zealand, placing the satellites into a 413-mile circular orbit. Details about the payload remain secret, and the webcast ended shortly after liftoff at the customer's request, Space.com has reported. This was Rocket Lab's 12th launch of 2025, as it also develops its larger, partially reusable Neutron rocket expected later this year. Venezuela has deployed 15,000 troops, along with drones, aircraft, and river security, to its border with Colombia to combat drug trafficking, the Interior Minister announced, citing the seizure of 53 tons of drugs this year. The move follows U.S. accusations that President Nicolas Maduro and the Interior Minister are both tied to drug cartels, and with Washington offering rewards of up to $50 million for Maduro's capture. Maduro rejected the claims as an imperialist threat, Al Jazeera has reported. Meanwhile, the United States has sent 2 additional Navy vessels, the USS Lake Erie and the USS Newport News, to the Caribbean to join a larger amphibious squadron targeting Latin American drug cartels. President Trump announced that his administration will seek the death penalty for homicides in Washington, D.C., describing the move as a response to a crime epidemic, even though violent crime in the city has declined in recent years. Trump has recently asserted control over D.C.'s police force and deployed the National Guard, emphasizing that capital punishment would serve as a strong deterrent. However, the death penalty in D.C. was nullified by the Supreme Court in 1972, repealed by the D.C. Council in 1981, and overwhelmingly rejected by voters in a 1992 referendum, Axios has reported. Critics note that his plan conflicts with local law and public opinion, highlighting a significant legal and political clash between the federal government and the district. Denmark summoned the top U.S. diplomat in Copenhagen after a report alleged that 3 Americans linked to President Donald Trump were conducting, quote, covert influence operations in Greenland to promote secession and closer ties with Washington. The Danish Foreign Ministry called the meeting a, quote, preventative conversation, stressing that interference in Greenland's affairs is unacceptable. The claims, published by Denmark's public broadcaster, said the operatives gathered information, built local contacts, and sought to exploit divisions over independence, the New York Times has reported. Denmark has repeatedly rejected Trump's push to acquire Greenland, a resource-rich Arctic territory, while Trump allies and associates have continued pursuing political and business ties on the island. Argentina's President Javier Milei was forced to cut short a campaign event on Wednesday after his motorcade came under attack in a town south of Buenos Aires. Video footage showed the libertarian leader standing on a moving pickup truck and ducking to avoid an object thrown from the crowd. Security quickly rushed him into a black van and evacuated him from the scene. The presidential spokesperson confirmed there were no injuries and then accused militants from the opposition of orchestrating the incident, the Financial Times has reported. The attack came amid rising public anger over corruption allegations within Milei's administration, adding further tension to an already heated political climate. Investigators determined that the Minneapolis church shooter, Robin Westman, who killed 2 children and wounded 18 others, was, quote, obsessed with the idea of killing children and appeared to harbor hate towards various groups. The 23-year-old, who previously attended the church's school, fired dozens of shots through windows using 3 firearms and left a note with hateful references. The victims were identified by their families, who expressed profound grief and called for action to prevent such tragedies. Westman, who died by suicide at the scene, had a history linked to the church but no known mental health issues. Officials described the attack as domestic terrorism, motivated by a hate-filled ideology, citing anti-Semitic and anti-religious statements found on weapons and notes, the BBC has reported. President Donald Trump said Monday the Justice Department will sue California over Governor Gavin Newsom's push to redraw a Democratic-leaning congressional map, calling it unfair. The move mirrors Republican efforts in the state of Texas, where new GOP-drawn districts are expected to give the Republican Party 5 more House seats in the year 2026. Newsom, who signed bills to advance California's map as a counter to Texas, responded to Trump's threat with "Bring it" on social media, CNBC has reported. The clash underscores both parties' aggressive mid-decade redistricting battles ahead of the next elections. A federal judge in Tennessee ordered new trials for 3 former Memphis police officers convicted in the 2023 beating death of Tyree Nichols. The officers, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith, were all found guilty last year on federal charges, but acquitted on related state charges. U.S. Chief District Judge Cheryl Lippman ruled new trials were warranted after concerns arose over comments allegedly made by U.S. District Judge Mark Norris, who was set to sentence them, suggesting the Memphis Police Department was, quote, infiltrated to the top with gang members. Lippman said the appearance of judicial bias made retrials necessary. Nichols, 29 years old, died 3 days after being brutally beaten following a traffic stop, an incident that was captured on video, NBC News has reported. 2 other former officers, Emmett Martin and Desmond Mills, pleaded guilty in the federal case and await sentencing. At least 20 Palestinians, including medical staff, 4 journalists, and an aid worker, were killed in Israeli strikes on the Nasser hospital compound in southern Gaza on Monday. This, according to hospital officials and Gaza's health ministry. The IDF confirmed the strike, saying it would launch an inquiry and expressed regret for civilian casualties. Nasser is the only functioning hospital in southern Gaza, making the attack especially significant as Israel prepares for a new offensive in Gaza City, the Associated Press has reported. Since the war began after Hamas's October 7th attacks on Israel, around 63,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children, have been killed. Protests erupted across the United Kingdom on Saturday against the use of hotels to house asylum seekers, with counter-demonstrations by anti-racism groups leading to clashes and arrest. The rallies followed a high court ruling blocking a hotel in Essex from hosting asylum seekers after local opposition. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government, facing record-high asylum applications and channel crossings, says it will appeal the decision while pledging to close all asylum hotels by the year 2029, Al Jazeera has reported. The unrest comes as far-right Reform UK leader Nigel Farage pushes for mass deportations and withdrawal from international refugee agreements, fueling tensions over immigration policy. Cracker Barrel responded Monday to backlash over its new logo, which drops the Uncle Herschel character and the phrase Old Country Store, leaving only the name against a yellow barrel outline. Critics called the rebrand bland and un-American, sparking social media outrage and a 7% stock drop last week. The company reassured customers that Uncle Herschel will remain on menus, signage, and in stores, and that its signature decor, rocking chairs, fireplaces, and vintage Americana, will now stay, CNBC has reported. Cracker Barrel emphasized its values and focus on food and hospitality, saying it will, quote, keep testing, learning, and listening. RoboMart, a Los Angeles startup, unveiled its new RM5 self-driving delivery robot on Monday, aiming to make on-demand delivery profitable. The Level 4 autonomous vehicle carries up to 500 pounds in 10 lockers, enabling multiple deliveries at once. RoboMart's model lets retailers run storefronts on its app, charging customers a flat $3 fee per order, which is far lower than traditional delivery platforms. The company plans to launch in Austin, Texas later this year. Founded in 2017, RoboMart previously piloted the Stores on Wheels program but now sees automation as the key to cutting delivery costs by up to 70%, TechCrunch has reported. Despite raising under $5 million, it has built 5 robot generations and now hopes to disrupt the crowded delivery market. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting China this weekend for the first time in 7 years, attending a Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit alongside Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, amid worsening ties with the United States. The visit follows U.S. tariffs on Indian exports over New Delhi's continued Russian oil purchases, which India defends as essential for energy stability. Modi aims to stabilize India-China relations, diversify trade, and boost investment, while signaling independence from U.S. pressure, The Guardian has reported. Ahead of China, he strengthened ties with Japan, securing major investment commitments as India seeks to offset the economic impact of U.S. tariffs and balance global partnerships. A fast-moving wildfire in Napa County's wine country has burned over 6,800 acres since Thursday, forcing mandatory evacuations near Calistoga, officials said. As of Sunday night, the picket fire was 11% contained, with more than 600 structures threatened. Firefighters, aided by helicopters and drones, are battling the blaze in rugged terrain that was also hit by the devastating 2020 glass fire. The cause remains under investigation, ABC News has reported. The fire comes amid a West Coast heat wave, with red flag warnings in Southern California heightening fire risks. A federal judge blocked the Trump administration from firing Michael Abramowitz as director of Voice of America, ruling he cannot be removed without approval from the International Broadcasting Advisory Board. Abramowitz had been placed on administrative leave and was slated for termination amid mass layoffs affecting over 600 employees. Judge Royce Lamberth called the planned firing, quote, plainly contrary to law. Voice of America, along with affiliated networks like Radio Free Europe and Radio Marty, reaches over 400 million people and serves to promote U.S. influence globally, the Associated Press has reported. President Donald Trump signed an executive order requiring all new federal buildings, particularly in Washington, D.C., to adopt classical architecture, rejecting modernist and brutalist styles. The order aims to make federal buildings, quote, noble and admired by the public, with the General Services Administration responsible for implementation. The move reflects Trump's personal taste, already evident in White House renovations, including rose garden changes, oversized flags, and plans for a $200 million ballroom, CNN has reported. Supporters say classical architecture embodies American democratic values and timeless design. Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte filed a second criminal referral with the DOJ against Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, alleging she misrepresented the status of a Cambridge condominium and 2 other homes in government ethics filings. The move supports President Trump's effort to fire Cook, whom he previously targeted over alleged false mortgage claims. Cook has sued Trump to block her removal, CNBC has reported. Pulte claims the discrepancies in Cook's filings may have secured her lower mortgage rates and paint a pattern of false representations regarding her properties. Lego reported its best first half ever, with revenue up 12% to $5.4 billion and operating profit rising 10% to $1.4 billion. Growth was driven by new products including botanical sets, licensed collections like One Piece and Bluey, and partnerships such as Epic Games' Fortnite. The company launched a record 314 new sets and plans a multi-year Pokemon collaboration starting in 2026, CNBC has reported. Lego also expanded with 24 new stores, particularly in markets like China and India, helping attract new consumers and broaden its global reach. SpaceX's Starship completed a major test flight on Tuesday, deploying 8 mock Starlink satellites and trialing new heat shield tiles during re-entry. The 403-foot rocket, in its 10th launch, reached orbit before dispensing the satellites and enduring a fiery plunge through Earth's atmosphere, testing reusable shield technology crucial for future missions. The flight ended with a controlled ocean landing and an expected explosion, but marked key progress after earlier failures. NASA hailed the milestone as vital for Starship's role in the Artemis 3 moon landing, though significant challenges like in-space refueling and safe lunar landings still remain, NBC News has reported. Starship is central to SpaceX's long-term goals of Mars travel and expanding its Starlink satellite business. A federal grand jury declined to indict Sean C. Dunn, a former Justice Department paralegal, on felony charges after he allegedly threw a sandwich at a federal agent in Washington, D.C. The rejection marked the second recent refusal by grand jurors to approve felony assault charges against individuals accused of attacking federal officers. Dunn, who is 37 years old, was initially charged in a criminal complaint after confronting officers and throwing a sandwich at one near 14th and U Streets, the New York Times has reported. The high-profile case, amplified by viral video and administration attention, may still proceed as a misdemeanor, which does not require a grand jury indictment. A Utah judge has ordered the state legislature to redraw its congressional maps to comply with voter-approved Proposition 4, which established rules for fair and nonpartisan redistricting. The ruling comes ahead of a 2026 midterm elections and could help the Democrats, as one Utah district has previously elected a Democrat under competitive conditions. The decision has sparked partisan debate, with Republicans criticizing the court and Democrats welcoming the chance for fair representation, CBS News has reported. The ruling is part of broader nationwide redistricting battles that could influence control of the U.S. House in upcoming elections. President Trump announced plans to allow 600,000 Chinese students into the United States, more than double the current number, citing the importance of economic and educational ties. The proposal drew sharp criticism from prominent Republicans, including Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and influencer Laura Loomer, who framed it as a threat to American students and a national security risk. While Chinese students contribute billions to the U.S. economy, GOP lawmakers have long sought to restrict their visas, including through the Stop CCP Visas Act, NBC News has reported. Trump's comments come amid easing U.S.-China tensions, though he also threatens steep tariffs if China does not export rare earth magnets to the United States. A Polish Air Force pilot was killed when his F-16 fighter jet crashed during preparations for the Rodom Air Show, prompting cancellation of the event. The aircraft, from the 31st Tactical Air Base near Poznan, went down during a practice flight, erupting in flames, with no ejection attempts seen. No bystanders were injured. The Polish defense minister and NATO allies paid tribute to the pilot, a member of the elite Tiger Demo Unit, Al Jazeera has reported. Poland, which has relied on U.S.-made F-16 since 2003, is upgrading its fleet amid heightened defense spending following Russia's war in Ukraine. South Korea's former First Lady, Kim Kyung-hee, was indicted Friday on charges of bribery and stock market manipulation, accused of amassing over 1 billion won, or roughly $720,000, in illicit gains. Prosecutors say she profited from a stock scheme between 2010 and 2012, took bribes from a unification church in 2022, and conspired with her husband, the ousted President Yoon Suk-yeol, to receive free polling data. Yoon, impeached after declaring martial law in late 2024, faces insurrection charges carrying a possible death penalty. The former Prime Minister, Han Duck-sol, was also indicted for abetting Yoon's martial law attempt, CNBC has reported. The indictments come amid broader probes into Yoon's administration, approved by President Lee Jae-myung, which included raids on a church and a U.S.-South Korea air base, raids U.S. President Donald Trump criticized before later softening his stance in a meeting with Lee. At least 61 people, including 19 aid seekers, were killed Thursday as Israeli forces intensified strikes on Gaza City, targeting several neighborhoods. Residents reported mass displacement, with families fleeing toward the coast amid heavy bombardment that Gaza's civil defense said destroyed more than 1,500 homes. Israel is preparing a major ground assault on Gaza's largest urban center, which it calls Hamas's last stronghold, Al Jazeera has reported. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, warned the offensive marks a, quote, new and dangerous phase of the war, condemning the humanitarian catastrophe and urging it to stop. A fisherman in Costa Rica caught a rare 6'6" nurse shark with a bright orange body and white eyes, the first documented case in the species. The catch, made in Tortuguero National Park, marks the first recorded orange shark in the Caribbean Sea, this according to marine biodiversity researchers. The pigmentation condition gives animals yellow or golden tones, making this sighting a unique scientific discovery, USA Today has reported. Russia and China carried out their first joint submarine patrol in the Pacific this month, this according to Russian state media. A Russian diesel-electric sub traveled about 2,000 miles from Vladivostok, operating with a Chinese vessel in the Sea of Japan and in the East China Sea. While Beijing has not officially confirmed the mission, Chinese state media cited it as evidence of deepening military cooperation. The patrol follows years of expanding joint drills, including naval patrols around Japan since 2021 and coordinated operations near Alaska, CNN has reported. Meanwhile, the U.S. Coast Guard reported monitoring Chinese research ships in Arctic waters, and NORAD said it tracked 4 recent Russian surveillance flights near Alaska, an unusually high number, though not considered a direct threat. President Donald Trump's attempt to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, the first such move in the Fed's history, is expected to end up before the Supreme Court. Trump claims Cook made false statements on past mortgage applications, but Cook insists he has no legal cause to remove her and plans to sue. Analysts say the case could redefine the limits of presidential authority over the Fed and threaten its independence. If successful, President Trump could secure a majority on the Fed board, giving him greater influence over interest rate decisions, CNBC has reported. For now, Cook is expected to seek an injunction to remain in her post until the courts rule. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is rejecting President Donald Trump's threat to deploy the National Guard to the city, calling it unconstitutional and unnecessary, given recent drops in murders, shootings, and car thefts. Johnson said Chicago's investments in youth jobs, mental health, and affordable housing are driving crime reductions, not military force. Illinois officials, including Governor J.B. Pritzker, vowed to fight any federal overreach, while the ACLU warned of legal challenges if troops are sent without state approval, NBC News has reported. President Trump, who has also threatened to deploy the Guard to other cities, insists that residents are screaming for intervention, though critics accuse him of politicizing the military and manufacturing a crisis. New studies of samples from asteroid Bennu reveal it contains stardust older than the solar system, along with organic materials and ices from interstellar space. Collected by NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission and returned to Earth in 2023, the samples show Bennu's parent body likely formed beyond Jupiter and Saturn before being shattered in a violent collision and then reassembled multiple times, Live Science has reported. Scientists say the findings offer rare insight into cosmic conditions before the solar system formed 4.6 billion years ago. Bali, famous for its beaches and jungles, continues to face a severe waste problem, with plastic and garbage washing up on tourist hotspots and open landfills straining local management. To tackle the issue, hotels have tested beach cleaning robots, like the $65,000 B-Bot Smart Beach Cleaning Robot at Finn's Beach Club, which clears 180-meter stretches daily. Local leaders hope to expand the technology across coastal villages, the New York Post has reported. Combined with efforts from NGOs such as Mudfish No Plastic and Sun Guy Watch, which collected over 1 million kilograms of waste last year, Bali aims to drastically reduce landfill waste and improve beach cleanliness. An 18th century portrait stolen by the Nazis, Portrait of a Lady by Giuseppe Ghislandi, may have just resurfaced in a surprising location, hanging above a sofa in a coastal Argentinian home, discovered via real estate listings rather than official channels. The painting once belonged to Dutch Jewish art dealer Jacques Goldsteiker, whose collection was looted during World War II. An investigative journalist from Dutch newspapers traced the artwork through the post-war life of Nazi official Frederick Kadjian, who fled to Argentina. Archival research and additional photos strongly suggest the painting remained in Kadjian's family for 80 years. Goldsteiker's heirs plan to pursue restitution, ABC News has reported. Experts note the discovery underscores the unpredictable nature of recovering Nazi-looted art, with many works potentially still hidden in private homes. A gunman fired a high-velocity rifle at a group on a Minneapolis sidewalk on Tuesday, killing one person and injuring 6 others. Authorities believe at least one victim was targeted. The shooter fled in a vehicle and remains at large, while police continue investigating. The incident, near a Catholic high school, caused significant injuries and property damage, but all 6 injured victims are expected to survive, ABC News has reported. The FBI's raids on John Bolton's home and office are part of a broad investigation that may extend beyond his controversial memoir, The Room Where It Happened, raising speculation about potential criminal charges. Bolton's book, which bypassed final White House review and contained classified information, previously prompted a civil lawsuit under the Trump administration, though no charges were filed and the case was later dismissed under Biden. Legal experts say Bolton could face liability under the Espionage Act, while the investigation, based in part on CIA evidence, appears wider than the book controversy, fueling debate about whether the DOJ's actions are legitimate or politically motivated, Fox News has reported. A new crowdsourced report from Enigma documents over 8,000 UFO sightings in the United States since late 2022, including more than 400 reports of small metallic orbs often spotted near military bases in New York, California, and Arizona. Witnesses described the orbs as silent, fast-moving, and sometimes captured on radar or even video, though many remain unexplained. The Pentagon's UFO office, the AARO, has dismissed most cases as natural or even man-made phenomenon, but some remain unresolved. Similar orbs have been reported worldwide for decades, with one notable 2022 drone video capturing them in the Middle East, the Daily Mail has reported. A recovered metallic sphere in Colombia, dubbed the Boogosphere, sparked debate among scientists and UFO researchers, though some experts believe it to be a hoax. A BBC investigation accused a Leeds funeral director, Amy Upton, who is 38 years old, of keeping dead infants in her home, including allegedly placing one in a baby bouncer while watching cartoons. Families told reporters they were shocked to discover their children's bodies at Upton's house instead of a professional funeral setting, describing the scenes as, quote, like a horror film. Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust has since banned her from its mortuaries and maternity wards, the Mirror has reported. Upton, who runs Florey's Army, denies wrongdoing and says families often prefer their babies not to be left in mortuaries, insisting complaints have been rare in her 8 years of work. The Justice Department is investigating whether former senior FBI officials mishandled classified documents that were found in a burn bag at the FBI headquarters, related to the 2016 Russia election interference probe. No criminal charges have yet been filed, but critics, including former Trump allies, claim the handling of the Russia investigation was politically motivated. The FBI's original probe, Crossfire Hurricane, and subsequent Mueller investigation confirmed Russian interference but found no illegal coordination by Trump campaign officials, though the controversy over the Bureau's actions continues, CBS News has reported. Lithuania's parliament elected Inga Ruzinin, a former labor union leader and relative political newcomer, as the country's new prime minister, following the resignation of her predecessor amid investigations into his business dealings. Ruzinin, 44, received 78 votes to 35 and leads a center-left coalition with a solid parliamentary majority. She aims to restore stability, while Lithuania's foreign policy, including support for Ukraine, is expected to remain unchanged, the Associated Press has reported. Germany and Canada signed a memorandum of understanding on Tuesday to boost cooperation on mining critical raw materials. Chancellor Friedrich Merz called it a step to strengthen both economies, while Prime Minister of Canada Mark Carney highlighted Canada's rich deposits of lithium and rare earths. The deal comes amid concerns over China's dominance in the global supply of these minerals, highlighted by recent Chinese export controls, Yahoo News has reported. Vietnam evacuated tens of thousands, shut schools, and closed airports as Typhoon Kajiki, the strongest storm to hit the country this year, approached landfall Monday with winds of up to 103 miles per hour. Authorities warned of destructive winds, storm surges, flash floods, and landslides, particularly in low-lying coastal areas. More than 40,000 people had already been moved to safety, with plans to evacuate nearly 600,000 across several provinces. Airports and schools were closed, flights canceled, and military forces mobilized for rescue operations, CNN has reported. Typhoon Kajiki is expected to weaken after making landfall. NVIDIA announced Monday that its new robotics chip, the Jetson AGX Thor, is now available as a $3,499 developer kit, with shipment starting next month. The module, based on NVIDIA's Blackwell GPU, is 7.5 times faster than its predecessor and designed to power generative AI models for robots and self-driving cars. Bulk orders of over 1,000 chips will cost $2,999 each. NVIDIA says companies like Amazon, Meta, Agility Robotics, and Boston Dynamics are already using its Jetson chips, CNBC has reported. While robotics currently makes up just 1% of NVIDIA's revenue, the division grew 72% year over year, and the CEO has called it the company's biggest growth opportunity beyond AI. Ukrainian drone strikes on Russia's Kursk region overnight sparked a fire at a nuclear plant, damaging a transformer but causing no injuries or radiation leaks, officials have said. The attack, coinciding with Ukraine's Independence Day, also hit power facilities, while separate drone debris ignited a blaze at the Ust-Luga fuel port in Leningrad region. Russia claimed to have intercepted 95 Ukrainian drones, while Ukraine reported downing or jamming 48 Russian drones overnight, Fox News has reported. In a speech marking the holiday, President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed Ukraine would secure a just peace and build lasting security and strength. Russia launched one of its largest strikes since the 2022 invasion, hitting Kyiv and other cities with missiles and drones on Thursday, killing at least 23 and wounding dozens. Explosions damaged homes, infrastructure, and foreign diplomatic sites, though Russia claimed it targeted military facilities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the assault was Moscow's response to peace efforts following U.S. President Donald Trump's recent summit with Vladimir Putin. The United States, the European Union, and Britain condemned the strikes, while Washington acknowledged Trump's peace push had been undermined, Reuters has reported. Despite rising civilian casualties, Moscow insists it does not target non-combatants and says it remains open to talk. SpaceX launched its 33rd resupply mission to the International Space Station early Sunday, sending a Dragon capsule carrying 2.5 tons of supplies, including crew provisions, science equipment, and spacewalk gear. The cargo also features a new add-on propulsion kit with Draco thrusters to help maintain the station's orbit, supplementing Russian reboost operations. The 29-hour journey will see the Dragon dock Monday morning, delivering 50 research projects, including studies on bone loss, 3D metal printing, and bioprinting for nerve regeneration, CBS News has reported. The Dragon will remain docked until December, performing periodic orbital boost starting in September. Norway's $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund, managed by Norges Bank Investment Management, has divested from Caterpillar and 5 Israeli banks over concerns about their roles in rights violations linked to the West Bank conflict. The fund cited Caterpillar bulldozers used in the destruction of Palestinian property and Israeli banks' as financing of settlement construction deemed illegal under international law. The move comes amid political pressure in Norway and heightened scrutiny over the fund's exposure to Israeli firms during the Gaza conflict. While the NBIM says it is simplifying its Israeli holdings in line with ethical guidelines, critics note it continues investing in other controversial sectors and countries, CNBC has reported. The fund stresses its mandate balances returns with human rights considerations, with analysts noting such exclusions have had little long-term impact on performance. A massive dust storm swept through Phoenix on Monday, darkening skies, halting traffic, cutting power to tens of thousands, and damaging Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. The storm, followed by heavy rain, wind, and lightning, left flights delayed and caused leaks inside of the airport. Residents described near-zero visibility, rattling winds, and dust sweeping into their homes. While parts of Arizona has seen rain this monsoon season, Phoenix has remained unusually dry, The Guardian has reported. Forecasters expect a chance of even more rain before conditions clear. 2 men in Indonesia's Aceh province were publicly caned for hugging and kissing, acts deemed violations of Sharia law that can lead to banned sexual relations. Sentenced to 80 lashes each, the men were whipped in a city park in Banda Aceh, witnessed by about 100 people. Aceh is the only Indonesian province enforcing Sharia law, which also punishes adultery, gambling, and other moral offenses, CBS News has reported. Human rights groups, including Amnesty International, condemned the caning as discriminatory and cruel, highlighting ongoing abuse and stigma against LGBTQ+ individuals living in the region. Pakistan has begun evacuating tens of thousands of people after India released water from overflowing dams, raising the risk of cross-border flooding amid ongoing heavy monsoon rains. Over 100,000 residents in Punjab province have been moved to safer areas as authorities warn rivers could swell further. The alert was communicated diplomatically rather than through the usual Indus Waters Commission, amid strained ties following a deadly April attack and a brief war in May, Al Jazeera has reported. Recent floods and cloudbursts have already killed hundreds in Pakistan, highlighting the country's vulnerability to extreme weather. An interstellar object, 3I Atlas, has been spotted emitting nickel without iron, a behavior never seen in natural comets. Detected by Chile's Very Large Telescope, the object sheds nickel and cyanide at unusual rates, with emissions rising sharply as it nears the sun. Unlike typical comets, it is carbon dioxide rich, water poor, and appears to lack a visible tail. These anomalies have sparked debate, the Daily Mail has reported. Harvard physicist Avi Loeb suggests the nickel signature could hint at an artificial origin, while most scientists argue it reflects unusual but natural processes. Colombia says 34 soldiers have been kidnapped by villagers under orders from a rebel group after a clash that killed 10 FARC holdouts. The villagers are reportedly demanding the return of a slain rebel's body. The defense minister, Pedro Sanchez, vowed to use all resources to secure the soldiers' release and offered a $5,000 reward for information on the rebel commanders behind the incident, the Associated Press has reported. Such detentions are part of ongoing security challenges in rural areas contested by drug gangs and armed groups since the FARC peace deal back in 2016. A Wisconsin man, Ryan Borgward, pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor obstruction charge for plotting to fake his own death in a kayaking accident and to flee the country. He was sentenced to 89 days in jail, the time he spent misleading authorities, and ordered to pay $30,000 for the 2-month search effort. Borgward had researched faking a drowning, obtained a new passport, and then traveled overseas, but his plan unraveled after being tracked back to Georgia, NBC News has reported. He returned to Wisconsin voluntarily and expressed regret for the distress caused to his family and his friends. Legal proceedings have begun for 4 Army soldiers charged in the sexual assault of a college student at Joint Base Lewis McChord in October. The defendants, Pedro Ruiz, Deron Gordon, Jaden Basarge, and Kaylin Krull, face multiple charges, including sexual assault, indecent recording, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice, with Krull also charged in a separate child sexual assault case. Gordon has pleaded guilty, while the others await trial, NBC News has reported. Each faces potential decades in prison, and the cases are scheduled to continue through November. The U.S. Coast Guard offloaded more than 76,000 pounds of illegal drugs in Florida, the largest single operational seizure in its history, worth $473 million. The haul, including over 61,000 pounds of cocaine and 14,000 pounds of marijuana, could have supplied 23 million lethal doses of cocaine. Part of Operation Pacific Viper, the seizure involved multiple interdictions in international waters with the support from the U.S. Navy, Customs and Border Protection, and the Royal Netherlands Navy, resulting in 34 arrests and 11 vessels intercepted, Fox News has reported.